Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm Don Irvine, your host, and he is Brian McNichol.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Yeah, try different things
There you go.
until we build up that whole new thing, whatever.
There you go.
Anyway, so this is I always forget to do this. I know most podcasts do this, or they label them somewhere. So this is episode 316 of this version, but as I've said many times before, we've been doing this thing forever, it seems.
Yeah, it's
On
been a long
different
time.
formats. So we've covered a lot of ground. Not sure how much is out there in the internet. Some of it I think got lost along the way when websites got shut down and whatnot. And Facebook has this new policy, which I'm not really quite sure what this means in the long run, but I guess they were tired of storing everybody's videos forever, so they're basically deleting old videos or older videos. So I'm starting to get more notices about this video will be deleted, and I'm like, well, probably for us, I don't know that something that's a few months old or whatever, or a few years old. I don't know that really matters in the long run. I think we've still got some of them up on YouTube. So uh, when I'm gone, if my grandkids ever want to be crazy and actually see what Grandpa was doing, they can do that. It's probably the way to go.
There you go.
Anyway, so
I wonder if we've been inconsistent. You could find something from 2016 that we said just the opposite of what we're saying today.
yeah, well, that's yeah, right. That's the thing, is that we don't exactly have this video vault, and I don't have a team of researchers or whatever that can say, by the way, here's a clip from you from 2016 or 2018 or 2020 or whatever, and things like that. So we don't have that ability to go back and grab them. I mean, it's a lot of work. So using this platform, if we did have those videos readily available, we could do that. And StreamYard has also been doing. I don't know if they were doing it for a couple of weeks, but they didn't. I don't remember seeing them do this last week, but they would say, AI will create clips of the show. So I've been playing. I let it create. It would create like 10 clips, and then I would repost them for shorter clips for people who just don't have the attention span, which is a lot of people, to watch the whole thing. And I'm like, AI not terrible about the way they clipped everything. So, it's a lot easier than me trying to go through and edit something. So I like that kind of. Anyway, so we've got, my wife and I've got this. I'm calling it our 40th wedding anniversary trip next month, and we've been as the planning has been going, buying the tickets. She's been working on the hotel rooms and trying to coordinate with my daughter-in-law in Japan and everything like this. And one of the decisions we made was to go ahead and apply for global entry. Now, we both have had TSA pre-check, which we love. Pretty inexpensive. The handful of times we travel, it just helps speed you through, security, which I'll take any day of the week. And so, when global entry is, if you're going to go overseas, it's supposed to speed up your entry back into the United States. So I'm going to say this and the passport renewal that I've gone through have been generally a pretty good experience. My wife has been saying, maybe this is an effective Doge. I was actually worried that Doge was going to go the other way and it was going to hurt me, because the passport that they say would take 4 to 6 weeks arrived in a little over a week, and I didn't have to pay an expedited fee. We applied for global entry on Friday, and then I think by Sunday we get an email saying you can schedule your interview. So here's the thing. So she goes online, she schedules the interview, and we have to go to an airport. So we choose BWI, Baltimore Washington International Airport. 45 minutes away from our home or whatever. And we we weren't exactly sure where we're supposed to go. They give you pretty good directions, but we're not used to the lay of the land of having to do global entry and go find customs and border protection and all this kind of stuff. So we arrived a little early, parked in the garage. They told us to park in, and we're thinking like, oh, we're early, and they had lots of slots available, so maybe we get in a little early. So we go down this corridor, first door, corridor, and we turn the corner and we look, and there must have been 15 or plus people sitting there waiting for their interview. And I'm like, uh-oh. This is our government at work. What does this mean?
You knew there was a bottleneck somewhere.
yeah. My luck was about to run out, and you couldn't tell. There's no way of telling really how far behind on the appointments they were. They apparently schedule 4 or 5 every 10 or 15 minutes. They can handle that normally, but we couldn't figure. We were sitting there, and my wife starts a conversation with a guy who came in after us, and that helped kill some of the time when we finally got called in. And so there's one, Customs Border Protection agent doing all the interviews that day.
Oh, wow.
And so we were kind of curious, and he says, well, no one showed up to work, and he got called in. And so this is a room I think that has 4 desks in it. So they I guess they're doing 4 at a time, because it's the questions they're asking are not super personal in nature, because they take your passport, they take your driver's license, or whatever other identification passes muster, and they just kind of ask you questions about committing a criminal offense and that kind of stuff like that. Just they want to hear it from you. They take your fingerprints, and pretty much that's it. They show you the little card you'll get in the mail, and then you're good to go. So the interview is really, really short, from start to finish. But I'm thinking like, so my wife is like, all those people should be fired. So they could have been fired by now, but it's like, it looks like a situation where it's like, Customs Border Protection needs a little more help or something. They need to figure this out, because you cannot have these people backed up like that. I mean, it took our appointment meant we were, I guess they were running as a result 35 or 40 minutes behind with the one guy, and everything like that. So it's okay, but it wasn't kind of what we had planned in our mind. Yeah. And I think a lot of other people were kind of everybody was confused, not knowing what's going on. So anyway, it's our government at work, kind of. Right. But I will say, the process to get to that point was good, but there's a problem there. If your agents don't show up for work, you basically are leaving all these people backed up. What if they can only take half a day off of work? They figure, I'll be in and out in 20 minutes or whatever, and stuff like this. And this turns into you're waiting there for an hour and a half or whatever it is. There's some other ramifications along the way for that. But I think we're mostly set. I'm never quite sure. My wife, she plays around with a lot with luggage until I have a feeling she's not going to decide what luggage to use until the night before we leave.
I hear you.
I've got luggage. We have luggage that we bought over the years. It's kind of like she's always kind of toying. I was like, this will work, this won't work. Oh, maybe this will do. And all this stuff. I'm like, I leave all that to her, but it's a little bit kind of like, can you just choose the luggage? That's me.
I hear you.
I don't know. When you travel in the car, you probably aren't taking a whole lot, are you?
Especially this car I have now, it doesn't have a whole lot of trunk space. So we really have to think about, what do you actually need on these trips and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have your SUV anymore?
We got a different SUV, and it's okay. like it's BMW. It has a lot less trunk space than the Toyota I had. The cars are about the same size, but
ooh la la.
They used the Toyota was way better at using the space than BMW. It's kind of stark. BMW, it's more of a solid car. I feel like if I'm in a wreck, I'll probably win.
Yeah.
But the the other one was like designed for people much better.
Oh, you probably have some more bells and whistles than you did on your old car then.
Yeah, a few more bells and whistles.
Yeah, it's sometimes that can be kind of nice to have a few extra features that never really ask for it, but when that's what the car comes with, you're like, oh, okay, this is not bad after all.
Yeah, that's right.
And all that. All right, before we get to the news, the last musing here of things is just that. Are we getting a spring coming back here? Because the last couple of days I've been freezing my butt off.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of went in reverse. Then it was like I went to the Nats Saturday, who were sitting there 80 degrees, nice breeze, couldn't have been more pleasant. Next day it was in the it was 60, barely 60.
Yeah,
and then the last few days have been really cold. It was a hard freeze last night.
Yeah, I know, and it was actually. I mean, it was clear, but it was where we are. It was windy.
Yeah, it's windy here too. It was very. It was cold. It was not.
Yeah, if you at 30, at 40 and windy, it gets chilly. I mean, it's like 40 and clear. It's okay.
Apparently, we're in this for more than a week more to go before it starts to warm up.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think like now because of a little bit of that rain, I'm like, oh great. All of a sudden, my grass went from not really needing to be cut to now needing to be cut. But it's too cold.
It's too cold.
And so we're debating: do I hire somebody to cut it, or do I just go wait till everything kind of gets back to the to around 60 or 65, and then go out and cut it? I'm like, oh, this is so annoying.
We were talking about this the other day. Is like so this AAU basketball is just cranking out. We had our first tournament last weekend. One of my teams won their bracket. The other team did not. But one of the things I was telling them is like one of the cool things about AAU basketball season is it starts now in the cold. Like it's basically winter conditions, but by the time we're done, it's like July 21st. So, I mean, you go all the way through spring and most of the way through summer, so you start out in dead of winter conditions and you end in dead of summer conditions in one season.
Yep. All right. Now to the news for those who are sticking around here. U.S. So we're now trying to have some nuke talks with Iran. What's the deal here?
Well, they're isolated. Like we've heard them on money. We've heard them on people. We shut down the Houthis who were trying to mess with the shipping lanes. We have it's not we. I guess it's Israel more than us is pummeled the Hamas, which was also spending Iranian money. So like they're losing on a lot of fronts, and Trump has collapsed the energy market. I guess you saw barrel down below $60 a barrel again. So I mean that's their only real source of income. Most things right now in Iraq are not operating. Schools are not operating. Universities are not operating. A lot of the government is not operating because they've run out of money. So it's a real crisis of leadership now for Iran. And Iran is looking for a lifeline. And, it so happens that there's some things Trump is ready to extract from Iran to provide that lifeline. So it'll be interesting to see. But he was, he talked in this first term about, he could make a deal with Iran. There was a deal there to be struck. And that, he was looking forward to, he goes, one day they will come around and we'll be able to deal with them. And they're in bad enough straits now that we may have arrived at that deal. We may have reached that moment.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting to watch to see how that all develops. That would be a major development. Once again, Trump's foreign policy is so different than the standard foreign policy of past presidents, Republican and Democrat. But it seems to work, right? I mean, it has an effect, and people, I think they know how serious he is about the way they conduct diplomacy like this, and that you better pay attention and be ready to negotiate here because
his understanding of the pressure points is different than most people. It works. Like he does know how to make them say uncle. It appears that's what Iran is doing.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of mentioning a little bit about leadership and stuff like that too. I noticed, I didn't read the entire article, but I saw the headline in the Wall Street Journal, because it was today, it was one of the articles on the front page. The Palestinians, they're struggling with a loss of leadership inflicted by guess who, and so even now the Palestinians that are left behind, they're not happy. They're not happy with what's left behind, and they're kind of like, this. They're now looking at blaming,
Yeah, they're
Hamas and others.
turning on Hamas.
Yeah, yeah. This is this is a
Well, they got you
radical.
in a lot of trouble. Their fight was not your fight, and now you allowed them to make it your fight, and then you lost the fight for them, right? That's what I mean. If you're a typical like resident of Gaza, that's kind of how you have to look at it. These guys, they picked a fight that left us to lose.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just, to me, that's a remarkable thing, is to see that, you know they're interviewing Palestinians that are saying, I'm fed up with these guys. I
Yeah.
mean, we wouldn't have been in this mess had we had good leadership and we hadn't had this, that, and so this is a positive development, I think. And Israel needs to keep just turning up this, just keeps terms of the screws,
Yeah,
and just
keep the heat on. That's right.
right.
Because the other thing about it is, this is, example of, what Israel did, the way they responded to this has worked, right? They're like, you're not doing this again. We're going to give you a punishment where you do not lose track of what you're being punished for, and you do not forget this ever. So that's what they're doing now, is they're making sure that the Palestinians understand the what will result, the consequences of any future attacks, right? And so, I think a lot of them have looked at that thing and said, we don't want to get attacked like that again. We don't want that to happen again. And I think a lot of what Israel did was for the purpose of deterrence. It's like, see how bad this is. See what the kind of trouble this gets you into, right? So that next time people start talking about from the river to the sea and all that, you get these videos out and show them the destruction, show them Gaza, show them all the rubble in Gaza, show them all the people being frog marched, show it to them, make sure they understand these other guys are not messing around.
Yeah. So this was, I mean, the things that are happening on the world stage are still, quite interesting to see that happen. So we obviously, the story that's still dominating most of the news cycle, just like it was last week. So last week, I guess when we had the show, was that Liberation Day, or did he announce that, on the Tuesday just before the show? I guess anyway, April 2nd or April 3rd. So by April 3rd, I guess, is when the stock market started to say, uh-oh, Houston, we see a problem, at least in the way the market operates and everything like this. We talked a little bit about it, last week. Since then, we haven't had an up day on Wall Street since Liberation Day. There's a lot of excess, I guess, in the market, you could say, has been squeezed out. We've taken several steps back to where we were back to maybe 2020, 2021 at this stage. But
it's not, it's like 2023, but yeah.
Yeah, but
not that, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this paragraph where there's a graph that's out there, and it's like, it shows that like during the Biden administration, there was about a year and a half of much more dip than what we're going through now. But, you didn't hear about it because it was Biden and he was doing everything perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, this drop has been pretty precipitous. I mean, I checked like an hour ago and it was actually up like 30 points. The Dow was. So, I think hopefully most of the selling is behind us, at least for the mentality of the market. But there are no guarantees, because I don't really know where the end is with President Trump and his ongoing tariff battle at this stage. But apparently, I guess he's got, according to them, that 70 countries, or they want to talk Turkey, which is a good thing. They probably ought to at least go through some of these countries where they've got some nonsensical tariffs and say, sorry, we actually don't really have any business with you, so we'll just drop that, just because there's no effect there anyway. There was a funny story in the Journal about a little archipelago, Saint Pierre and Miquelon, and the residents there, this tiny little place, and they couldn't figure out why they got slapped with a tariff. And they finally did some research, and apparently several years ago, somebody who they can't figure out who it was, they have no idea who it was, sold someone in the U.S. like $3.5 million worth of halibut. That was the one transaction, and voila, they have a tariff. Because otherwise, they do no business with the U.S. So I mean, you know, I
Right.
mean,
And there's like the ones, I guess there's two islands that barely have any people on them that they
somebody's got a
tariff.
penguin, penguins.
Right. Because Australia was going to use those islands to go around the tariffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's, a lot of it is they know people's little tricks and they're trying to cover up for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some of that, but I know, I still think the administration is far from perfect. They make mistakes because nobody's perfect. And I think they just, they need to go and admit where they've kind of made some goofy assessments and just pull back on that and just, focus on the countries that are really hurting you at the beginning. There's a lot of other countries you don't necessarily need to worry about right now, but, and I don't know how long these negotiations will take, but I mean, if they're actually willing to talk and they're going to get into talks, then I don't see any harm of suspending the tariffs until they hammer that out. We saw that wild effect in the stock market, how it just swung by about 4,000 points, as a result of that. Look, I'm kind of with Elon. I mean, in terms of, I really want free trade. I want zero tariffs if we can get them there. But I think these, we're going to have to negotiate the heck out of a lot of these things to get there. I am no fan of the EU. I'm glad that they want to come to the table because I don't really like the EU. So, if we make some progress there, that's a good sign.
Well, I think you do it with the sword hanging over their head. I think if you take the tariffs off, they go back to doing what they've always been doing. I think he's got pressure campaign on. Once you get these things enacted, it's easier to just keep it than to drop it. I think he absolutely should keep the hammer down. The stocks will recover. Stocks have never not recovered. It already looks like the bottom is appearing on this. The slide of the market is ending, right? Yesterday it was in the green most of the day, right? It slipped just below right at the end of the day. It's up today, so I think the idea that, you're lopping off, 4% of the market a day is done, right? We're past that part of this. People have absorbed it. Markets are famously skittish. I've always said, I think the best job in journalism is when the guy who writes that story, when the market closes, the market was up today or down today, and investors were scared about this or enthusiastic about that. Because that's just the, biggest nonsense story of the day. You can put basically whatever you want. But, I think that aspect of this is largely over. People are going to start to recover. Companies will recover their value. They'll realize this is not the end of the world. And that, their governments are leaping into action to address unfairness, things that have been unfair to us. They always do. The methods are harsh. Yeah. They didn't get done without harsh methods, right? These problems have been approximately where they are for decades now, right? This is not something that popped up last week. These imbalances have been going on for 30, 40, sometimes some of these cases 70 or 80 years. So, the idea that we're getting around finally to addressing it, should not surprise anybody.
Yeah, I mean, and Art Laffer, I mean, he's been very positive about this development overall. I think the main target here, the big one here is China, is because this thing has been ratcheting up, more and more.
Almost is like, it's like he's doing one thing to the rest of the world and another thing to China.
Yeah,
right. China's its own mission here.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what the administration was thinking with regard to how things are manufactured. I have no problem of trying to bring back some of the jobs or some of the things back here and kind of what they call reshoring or whatever, back to the U.S. But I think there are industries that we lost long ago that we're not going to have a reindustrialization across America anytime soon. You can't build a factory basically overnight to do a lot of these things. You can bring some things back. Small businesses, which have relied on overseas production to get started and build a product stream, they're kind of scratching their heads trying to figure out where they go, and how they do this domestically. I mean, you know, making certain products in the U.S. is just gets expensive, and everything like this. Okay, so like necktie. So this has been, I don't know. I think my wife and I did this 15, 20 years ago, or whatever. We had when we were in Korea, we were getting some for AIM to resell, and we found out that you can buy neckties pretty cheaply in Asia, and we've got a whole bunch of them, and and had them shipped over, and they ran through customs, et cetera, et cetera. Because the one thing we couldn't find is a domestic manufacturer. There wasn't any that business. I think one of the last ones was in Baltimore, and they had folded up, a decade ago. They were gone. You aren't going to just start that back up, all of a sudden and bring that back. And so, there has to be, to me, some way of figuring out how you take some of these businesses. He talks about, we're going to make America wealthy again. All this money is going to be pouring into the United States as a result of these tariffs. But to me, there's always the flip side of what does it do to demand? What can people afford to buy in the long run? I mean, the Apple stores apparently are like swamped. People are like, I don't know if this iPhone is going to be $3,500. I think the $3,500 is kind of a far-fetched number anyway, but it's going to go from 1,100 to 3,500. But and Apple is trying to shift their production maybe to India, where the tariff levy is a little bit lower. But there's, at least in the short,
which does what? Hurts China, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, China is definitely going to get hurt by this. There is no doubt that they're taking a hit from all of this. That this trade war is really the U.S. and China, not really the U.S. and Vietnam or India or whatever. I mean, I think that's the main target is China. And the fact that he's lifted the de minimis rule, which is basically also aimed at China, the Timus and the Xi'ans, where they were able to ship tons of cheap products in that people were ordering online. This is directly targeted at China, not at India or Vietnam once again. So, China's got, they're the main target. Why else do you have 104% tariff where China's now back at what, 84%? So they're going back and forth with each other. I'm not sure where the end is, because Trump doesn't back down. I mean, he doesn't back down on these things. You come to the table, well, let's talk, and let's talk about something that's fair. And if need be, then we can talk about postponing or reducing the tariff, gradually or immediately, depending upon what we're coming up with here, so that we can level the playing field on that. I don't really have a general problem with that, but I do like to see something that's where it's a little more understandable, and not. It just seems there's a lot of willy-nilly in here, that the administration did not go and think everything exactly through on all of this. But I think in the end it'll probably work out fine. We just don't know. We just don't know exactly where that'll be or when that'll be. The problem I see, though, is the long term of, is this effect here, is that it has any effect that it might have on the economy, short term or not. If people start feeling it in their pocketbooks, if they start seeing prices go up and not go down, I mean, Trump basically was promising to bring down prices and things like that. But if prices go up, if inflation goes back up, then the 2026 midterms could be problematic. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, if oil is going below $60 a barrel, and inflation is already effectively down to 1.2%, that's not a huge worry to me, right? I think as long as the price of oil keeps going down, which it will, right? Because a lot of supply is coming online, not just in the United States, but OPEC That's what that's what the Iranians want peace for, so that they can sell oil on the open market again. Same with the Russians, who are running out of money because of the collapse of the price of oil. I think as long as that is going on, then you're not going to have much inflation, and the economy will recover stronger than it was before.
Well, here's something weird. Here's something that has been interesting about the oil price is that. So I think I had written down some figures of when Trump came into office, and I think when he took office in January 20th, I think oil was $80 or so a barrel, right? And AAA gas prices were $3.12 nationally. But oil prices are now down, 25%. But I've seen gas prices in our area either tick up a little bit or not go anywhere, which I'm thinking, like, normally,
it's cheaper here.
Yeah, normally in the past, I would have seen some bigger drops, but I passed by several gas stations on my way back to and back from the gym, and these prices are holding firm, if not going up, by 10 cents. And we've got one gas station in the area, a Marathon, that's in Rockville, that's around 303, but everybody else is 10 to 20 to 30 cents higher per gallon in this area, and it's not going anywhere. And I'm just like, wait a minute, oil prices have dropped. I always, prices never drop as fast on the retail level. When they always rise quicker. When oil goes up, it's like the next day.
The next day, that's right.
Right. Oil prices drop, the next day you're still paying the same price. So right. they move it down much more gradually.
No, but this time of year, you run into that where they start changing the blends too.
So that may have a mitigating factor in there, but it's a 25% drop on the price of oil should have had a bigger effect in this, because I think it was about a week ago when I did the AAA thing. It was 326 was the average. It's like, this is not computing right now the way it should be. Something in the system is not working the way it should be. So hopefully it trickles down there, because gas prices are important to the consumer. That's a psychological thing too. I mean, people who drive their cars a lot for their jobs and that, their eggs may be a factor to a certain point, but I think people have gotten used to now that egg prices are going to be roughly at this level for a while.
So I mean, they've dropped. What did they drop? Like 79% or something since Trump took office.
I don't know. I mean,
fallen off the table the last few weeks.
Well, I don't know. It's been dropped. Costco's my measurement tool, and they never got outrageously high at Costco. So I would guess at the best they might be down 15 or 20%. I mean, and there's a lot of people who buy a lot of stuff at Costco, and the price of eggs at Costco is basically leveled off. It's about, I don't know, I think it's come down to, like, I'm going to say $3.25 or $3.50 for a dozen eggs or something like that, or for us. Anyway, much better than most of the other stores around here anyway, but much lower than it was before. But the problem with things like that and milk and bread is that stuff like that they fluctuate a little bit, and it's hard to pinpoint all things that go on. Though when I do look at Costco, I'm like, gosh, the price of milk hasn't budged, which is like remarkable, because I'm used to seeing it fluctuate with a little bit, not a whole lot, but lately it's been extremely steady. But it just but all this stuff gives me that same mentality. It's like, should I be buying? Like I said, we're preparing for a trip, and I'm like, there's a couple of things we're thinking about buying. He's like, maybe we should just go ahead and buy them now.
Well, it depends on what it is. Yeah, you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little camera thing, which is Japanese, which I assume was made in Japan. Stuff like that. I'm under no illusion that most of what I buy winds up being made in Japan or Vietnam or these other places that are going to get hit with tariffs. Now, as long as the product is already here and in inventory, no problem. It's all the stuff that's coming in, that's going to be arriving once it hits the ports. That's a whole new story and everything like that. It's like I think I said this last week too. It says, the market and everything like this is that they're operating on They just don't like uncertainty. Business leaders do not like uncertainty.
Yeah.
If they can see, if they have some,
Right.
confidence.
But the thing about it is like we can't run our economy based on their, irrational sense of
Right. No, I
danger.
mean,
Right.
we're not beholden to that.
Right. But that's what, people are like, oh, we got to do something about the stock market falling. No, we don't. It's not falling that much, and it'll recover. And what is it? So 75% of the people don't have anything to do with it anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, it still goes. The stock market is not the economy, and the economy is not the stock market.
Right. That's right. And so, like, if you should not be building your thing to make the stock market happy. That's this is just it's a trailing indicator. And we're not really sure what it's an indicator of all the time, right? What it's actually showing us. You're doing a deal where you're addressing generational unfairness, right? There's something going on here beyond, whether stocks go up today. So, it's going to take some time before it produces all the benefits it can produce. But this is the time to put the pedal down. You're not getting a better political environment to try to do this than you have right now, right? If you soft pedal now, if you go easy now, you'll never get it, right? And it's like, my neocon friends are all like, this is not conservative principles. We don't have tariffs, right? And it's like, okay, you guys had the mic for 40 years. For 40 years, those are the guys that we turn, the free marketers, the, free trade, take all the restrictions off of trade. We kept waiting on you to make like an intellectual argument behind that we could sell, that we could win elections with, and you never did. It was all just, cut it down to the point where it hurts us in America, and we don't get anything out of it, right? And they never had something that you could sink your teeth into and defend. So, as I look at it, it's like I don't feel sorry for those people, and I don't really care about their whining about the stock market. Well, it's like it'll be fine, and that doesn't bug me. What does bug me is, the people on our side that like, what you got elected to do, right? It was pretty clear. Trump said, "This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it." All he's done is go around keeping promises, and you put your arm around Trump, and you like that complete full endorsement he gave you on Twitter and everything. But now you're, an economics expert, and you know better than Trump, right? And no, you don't, right? So, we, as usual, the Republicans' problem is the drag from their own party.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that as well, but I mean, there's so many things that factor into all of this. I mean, the opinions on this are becoming very widespread. I mean, and this part of the stock market issue is just that. We have this thing, and it's called the wealth effect, right? And it's a psychological thing, right? It's not something you can basically put your hands around and say, this is, pile money. But people have their 401ks and whatever, their retirement plans and other savings and things like that, and they've invested in the market, stocks, bonds, whatever, and so. As the market went up and as their portfolios increased, that wealth effect translated into people going out and saying, well, at least on paper, I'm worth this much more money than I was 2 years ago, 6 months ago. Therefore, I can pull some money out or whatever. I have money to go ahead and spend on X, Y, Z, improvements, vacations, whatever. And so they go and they do that. What happens when you have a market that has this rapid decline in just a matter of days is that the wealth effect almost works in reverse, where people are like, oh, they start getting scared. I always hate people. We had that in '87. We've had that all these crashes and things like that. With the bear markets, people get really panicking. Like, you can look at time and look at history. The market over time is still your best bet for where you should be placing your money. If you want to put them in index funds or whatever, that's fine, because you don't know how to invest in a stock. That's fine. But over time, it's still better than a savings account, over the long run. It's still better than putting it in bonds over the long run. So, you do that. Don't panic. Maybe even try to, maybe even nibble away a little bit and buy a little more. and you'll probably even make more money down the line
Yeah. So
if you
the
have.
said the other day, stocks are now on sale.
Yeah, I mean, you
Marked down to move.
right, but you know, but and it's hard in this kind of a market that's choppy, and the market was choppy even before the trade, before all the tariffs went into effect. It's like if you're trying to time the market, that's the wrong thing to do. You just need to say, you know, this is I like this, I like Amazon at whatever, and you
Right.
buy it, and then you just stick it away, and you have to have a long-term perspective on these things, and not like, oh, I just lost, you know, I just bought that stock 2 days ago and it's down 10%. Forget about it.
Yeah.
If you believe in the company and it's a good company and it's got a solid balance sheet, buy it. That's fine. It'll come back. It'll be fine. You know, we've got market turbulence. Nothing new in that respect. You know, Trump is not an economist either, so you know, I don't know how much he really understands about things. I know what he wants to do. You know, as far as, you know, we knew, yes, he did promise tariffs. I think part of the issue is that I don't think that a lot of people thought that there were going to be tariffs to this extent. I mean, I still think it was like, you know, beeline on China. You know, you look at what he did on his first term, you think it's going to be kind of a repeat of the first term, maybe a few other things. He's expanded that beyond what, you know, what a lot of people expected, right, and predicted. So as a result of that, it kind of was a little bit of tariff shock in terms of where he went and where he's gone with that. I think that'll wear off once we kind of figure out how this is all going to work, what it does to the manufacturing process, how it filters through to the supply chain. What do you and I see on the end result the next time we go to a store and we want to buy a widget of some sort or whatever? You know, I don't know. I mean, I have no clue really how it affects me, except that I'm glad that my iPhone I bought this past year, I don't have to, I'm not worrying about this thing for years to come. So that has no effect on me. You know, I bought my wife an iPad because her iPad mini had more or less died or was dying on her. But I bought that, you know, a week or two ago, well before these tariffs were coming in, before I even thought these things were going to be, you know, what they were. So, you know, I already went ahead and I was ahead of the curve without even knowing about it. But that's fine. Yeah, the Republicans, what's happening now, what the problem is that you've got a lot of these Republicans that are now publicly grousing about the tariffs because they're worried about their jobs, you know, in the election. And there is some value to that, but I think, you know, it's 2025, it's still early. You know, 6 to 8 months from now, things, you know, if things aren't better, then I might understand a little bit more, because you're starting to get closer to that kind of cycle where they're really starting to ramp up for those that are coming up for re-election in 2026. But I think it's still a little early to start, you know, making noise and start grousing about the tariffs publicly. And you know, these are people who supported Trump, and you kind of said, you know, you put your arms around Trump, he supported you, all these kinds of things, and now you're starting to grouse about it. I mean, we knew that like Rand Paul was going to be Rand Paul, because that's what he does, right? Or
Right.
you know, so, but some of the others that are starting to grouse, like, you know, what's going on here? Again, what is Senator Kennedy had something funny he said the other day. I mean, he's always got a lot of funny things he says. You know, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, you know, he made something. You know, he said he had a funny remark, and I think you just have to kind of take a deep breath in the long run, right? It's like, don't get overly panicked about any of this. Take a deep breath. You know, besides, you know, in the meantime, while people worry about tariffs, you know, Trump's out there. We talked about this. He's working on nuclear talks with Iran. You know, that's great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are going on. And, you know, to the next subject as we move, and it all kind of interrelate anyway, is that there's been like 140 plus, you know, judges that have ruled against Trump or whatever, you know, cases brought before all these judges all around the country, but you name it, you know, all these people, these liberals and whatever, have been throwing up all these things. We're suing them for this, we're suing for that, and whatever. And now we have SCOTUS coming in there and basically starting to backstop Trump. Now, some of it's a little more technical, but it does stop or slow down the train a little bit, because even if he doesn't get a complete victory all the way across the board, I mean, one of the things that, you know, the Supreme Court was saying is that these things lack standing, right? On the one, this was the one for the employees. He fires all these employees. They go there and, you know, they said, you lack standing. This case shouldn't be. This case should not be brought here. And so, judge shopping has been going on forever.
Right.
But this is an abuse of judge shopping for what's going on.
That's one thing is the court is starting to dig in against judge shopping, right?
Yeah.
With the Buzzberg, with the El Salvador people. Like this guy was telling them to turn the planes around.
Right.
No, bro. You do at the end of the day work for us. So what they have told them is, this needed to be a habeas hearing. Like they're trying to do this through the Administrative Procedures Act. In other words, say, oh, you didn't get your form signed that you're able to do this. And it's like, the Trump administration is saying, we're a co-equal branch too. And like the things that we're in charge of, we get to do it without seeking congressional approval. Right. And the judge essentially said, yes, that's true. Is that these people need to have a habeas opportunity. They need, if they're not a Trin Diagua member, they need a chance to prove it, right? Show the government, don't put me with those guys and actually establish that. Okay, fair enough. We generally say that, but and those are in the jurisdiction where you get busted. So you can't come to DC and get a judge shop you a nice leftist DC judge. You get what you get in Texas or wherever you get caught. And so, they're not going to apply for, you're not going to see habeas motions out of these guys because, then the government will show that they absolutely are gang members and that they absolutely did do whatever it is they said they did, and they will be deported, right? It's like they don't have a case, right? This was just a way to slow things down, so that's one. The employees, they've told Trump that he does have the power to fire all the employees he wants, basically. There's one more case that's going to go back through, which is the lady who was on Merit Systems Protection Board, and there was someone else that was on a similar board, which is viewed as independent boards. They're going to get another run at the Supremes, where they're also likely to lose. So, the whole idea that there are boards of people who could be run by members of the other party to sabotage the party that's in power. We aren't doing that anymore, right? That's what Trump is saying. If I'm in charge of the country, all the people that are running the government should be on my side, right? There should not be people whose job is to be in there and slow me down. Okay. That's the job of Congress. They don't want to give me the money to do what I want. Judges, if I go over the line and do something illegal, but ultimately voters, you don't like what I'm doing, you vote for my opponent, right? Because that's where the real redress in America used to be and needs to be again. It's like if you don't do it, you don't do what we want, then we vote for someone else. So, and what these guys are trying to make it is, we can stop you from doing what you want without winning an election, right? And that is what the court is saying is not going to fly anymore. We've let you do it for too long, and now we're cutting it off.
Okay, I just realized I'm up against a hard stop here, so we're gonna wrap up the show because I got something I have to take care of. So take us out of here.
Okay, I got to find our list of things. It's not on here. Young Dem set the challenge. Ha. It doesn't really matter who they run, right? They don't really have anybody they can run right now who's credible. Perhaps Josh Shapiro, but they'll never run him because they hate Jews. Eugene Robinson. So we're driving a lot of leftist icons out of media, which is a good thing because they weren't helping. The nightclub roof collapse, Octavio Dotel, also the former Prince William Cannon and Washington National Tony Blanco was killed in that. Tony Blanco was one away from the Cannons home run record. He hit 28. Hensley Bam Bam Mullins hit 29.
Tony Reale would love you.
Yeah, absolutely. Dodgers visit the White House over the objections of the Kevin Blackistone and some of the other tutters. Let's see what else is on here. Mark Cuban says he would win the Democratic. That's one of the things. Like that happens all the time. It's like these people think that they're talking about Stephen A. Smith. I'm going to airlift into this and run for president. Right. It's like it's a whole different set of skills. And like Trump was kind of a unicorn. He could do it. But Trump has been dabbling in politics, dabbling in that type of persuasion for a long time. These people just think I can walk in and be president. It does not work that way. Hands-off protests, it's the same losers Trump drubbed in November. They haven't grown in number or size or wisdom or influence. And finally, the Musk and Navarro spat, I hope, has ended soon. Those guys need to, if they don't like each other, that's fine, but it needs to be kept out of the
I don't know. I find it amusing just because he call him Peter Retardo.
Yeah, that's
so
then there's a big debate about whether you can call somebody a retard,
Yeah, exactly. We used to do that all the time as kids, so I don't know.
That's right.
All right. Anyway, run out of time. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And please join us again next week.